Your pond looks like a peaceful oasis from the surface, but underneath, a silent takeover is happening. It's called Coontail, and while it looks like a harmless underwater forest, it's actually a clogging machine that can ruin your fishing, kill your fish's oxygen supply, and turn your swimming area into a tangled mess. Today we're diving deep into why this native plant turns into a nightmare and the specific killer cocktails you need to take back your pond. In this episode, I'm showing you the secret weapon, techniques, and the critical water tests you must perform before you spend a single dime on treatment. Make sure to check with your local laws and regulations before using any of the recommended treatment options. Unlike the floating duckweed from our last episode, Coontail or Ceratophyllum demersum is a fully submerged aquatic plant. This changes everything from its role in the ecosystem to our methods for controlling it. This plant, also known as hornwort, is native to North America and is found across the entire United States. In healthy, moderate amounts, Coontail is an incredibly beneficial part of a pond's ecosystem. It provides critical shelter and spawning areas for fish like bluegill, perch, and bass, and supports insects and other macroinvertebrates that fish eat. It becomes a weed when it forms a dense monoculture that interferes with fishing, swimming, and inhibits predators from effectively finding and capturing prey. Proper identification is the critical first step. Coontail is often confused with other submerged plants, especially the very invasive Eurasian Watermilfoil. Treating for the wrong plant could potentially waste your time and money. Coontail is a free-floating, submerged plant and has no roots. Its long, slender stems can grow up to 11 to 15 feet long. The leaves are stiff, dark green, and arranged in whorls or clusters of 5 to 12 around the stem. Coontail's leaves are forked or branched, not feather-like. The plant is often bushy near the tip, which gives it the raccoon tail appearance. When you pull it out of the water, Coontail feels rough or spiny to the touch. It's also stiff and will hold its shape when it's out of water. Eurasian Watermilfoil or Myriophyllum spicatum is an aggressive invasive plant. Its leaves are also in whorls, but they are not forked. Instead, each leaf is feathery, made of 10 to 21 pairs of tiny leaflets along a central stem. When you pull it out of the water, it feels smooth and it's limp, and it won't hold its shape when it's out of water. Chara or muskgrass is actually a macroalgae, not a plant. It may look similar from a distance, but it has a gritty, bristly texture and gives off a distinct musky odor when crushed. So if Coontail is a beneficial native plant, why does it suddenly take over your pond? The answer is the same as it is for algae and duckweed: excessive nutrients. A Coontail infestation doesn't mean it's a bad plant, because it's not. A large, dense stand of Coontail is a symptom of a nutrient-loaded pond. Coontail is highly efficient at absorbing nutrients from the water, and it thrives in nutrient-rich conditions. These excess nutrients, mainly phosphorus, come from common sources such as runoff from fertilized lawns, crop fields, or golf courses, etc. When these nutrients wash into the pond, they are essentially fertilizing the water, and the Coontail takes full advantage of it, growing into dense, problematic mats that interfere with recreation and predator-prey dynamics. Unlike the green concrete mat of duckweed, which seals the surface, Coontail creates a clogging problem within the water column. Dense mats of Coontail can make fishing, very frustrating, constantly reeling in a huge clump of vegetation on your line. But the bigger hidden danger is ecological. While these plants produce oxygen during the day, they consume oxygen at night through respiration. More importantly, when these dense stands of coontail eventually die in the late summer or fall, their decomposition is carried out by bacteria that consume a huge amount of dissolved oxygen. This decomposition can lead to low oxygen levels or anoxia, which can stress the fish and even kill them sometimes. This is why chemical intervention is sometimes warranted, not just to reclaim your fishing area, but to manage the biomass and prevent an oxygen crash later in the season. When you decide to treat a submerged plant like coontail, your chemical strategy is different from treating algae or duckweed. You are no longer just treating the surface, you must treat the water column itself. Your herbicide must be delivered into the water to make contact with the entire plant. This is done with either fast-acting contact herbicides or slow-acting systemic herbicides. Contact herbicides are the sprinters. They kill only the plant tissue that they physically come in contact with, and they work very quickly. They are excellent for fast knockdown power and for spot treating problem areas like around docks, boat ramps, or swimming areas. Diquat is a broad spectrum fast acting contact herbicide that is rated as excellent for coontail control. It works by destroying cell membranes and chlorophyll, and you'll often see plants begin to die within days. It's extremely fast and effective and has a low risk for fish toxicity at the labeled rates. Diquat's main limitation, which we also saw in the duckweed episode, is turbidity. The active ingredient binds instantly to suspended silt and clay particles. If you apply Diquat to a muddy or turbid pond, the chemical will be inactivated by the sediment before it has much of a chance to treat the plant. Therefore, Diquat is not recommended for murky ponds. I usually apply at a rate of 2 gallons per acre in a 50-gallon spray tank or 24 ounces in a 4-gallon backpack sprayer. Indothal is another highly effective contact herbicide, also rated as excellent for coontail. It's very effective and can be used for spot treatments as well. You must pay close attention to the actual formulation. There are 2 types, the dipotassium salt like Aquathal and the amine salt like Hydrothal. The amine salt is toxic to fish. The dipotassium salt like Aquathal, however, has a higher margin of safety for fish at its recommended application rates. For this reason, I always stick with the dipotassium salt formulation. To be transparent, I rarely use Indothal for coontail control, just for the fact that it's more expensive than the other contact herbicides. I'll use Indothal for pondweed species, such as American pondweed, slender pondweed, and sago pondweed. A lot of times there is a diversity of weeds present that might include coontail in the mix. Then I'll resort to Indothal. If it's not an extremely dense stand, I'll use a rate of 5 gallons per acre or 10 gallons per acre if it's super dense. That equates to approximately a half gallon to a gallon in a 4-gallon backpack sprayer. Flumioxazin is a fast-acting contact herbicide rated as good for coontail control. It's broad-spectrum herbicide that works on many types of weeds. As we've learned with duckweed, flumioxazin is highly pH sensitive. It degrades extremely rapidly in water with a high pH, so if your pond's pH is above 7.5, the chemical will break down and become ineffective. My go-to rate is about 12 ounces per acre. Make sure to check your pond's pH before buying a flumioxazin product. With tough-to-kill infestations of coontail, I automatically go to a combination of Diquat and flumioxazin if the pond's pH is less than 7.5. Use them both at the application rates I mentioned before, and you'll be very pleased with the results. Remember to only treat a quarter to a third of the pond at a time to avoid a oxygen crash. Copper ethylenediamine complex such as comine is rated as excellent for coontail control. It's relatively fast, effective, and can also help control filamentous algae, which is usually present in dense stands of coontail. It is a copper product, so it can be toxic to copper-sensitive fish, such as koi and trout. The rate I start off with is 5 gallons per acre, which equates to approximately a half gallon in a 4-gallon backpack sprayer. If your pond has a pH higher than 7.5 and you have a tough to kill infestation of coontail, instead of using the flumioxazin, use the comine or its equivalent. Add 2 gallons of diquat and 5 gallons of comine to a 50-gallon tank, or 24 ounces of diquat and 64 ounces of comine to a 4-gallon backpack sprayer. Systemic herbicides are the marathon runners. They are absorbed by the plant and translocated through its vascular system, killing the entire organism. They are much slower, but the control is typically more complete and lasts longer. Fluoridone is a gold standard systemic herbicide rated excellent for coontail. It works by inhibiting pigment production, causing the plants to turn white and slowly die over a 30 to 90 day period. This extremely slow kill is its biggest advantage. It allows the dead plant matter to decompose gradually, which prevents the sudden oxygen crash that fast-acting herbicides can cause. Control can last for a full season or even longer. Fluoridone's slow action is also its main drawback. It requires a long contact time with the target plant to be effective. If your pond has a significant water exchange, fluoridone will not work. The chemical will be, diluted and flushed out of the pond before it can be fully absorbed. It is also one of the more expensive options and only effective for whole pond treatments, not just for some spot treatments. The application rate is a volumetric calculation, so you'll need to know the volume of your pond. I normally get good control of coontail at concentrations of 45 parts per billion, or roughly 4 ounces per acre foot. I go into greater detail about fluoridone in the duckweed episode if you're interested, so go check that out if you want to know more about fluoridone. 2,4-D is another systemic herbicide rated as good for coontail. For submerged weeds, it is most often applied in a granular formulation, which sinks to the weed beds. Granular formulations are excellent for targeting specific dense areas of submerged weeds like endothall. You must be careful with the formulation type. The ester formulations of 2,4-D can be toxic to fish, while the amine formulations are generally safer. This is not my first choice for coontail, but if it was the only thing I had in my toolbox, I'd apply 50 to 60 pounds of Navigate per acre foot. This herbicide is more effective on Eurasian Watermilfoil. For submerged weeds like coontail, you are not treating the surface area. You are treating the volume of the treatment area to achieve a specific herbicide concentration. The standard unit for measuring the volume of ponds is the acre foot. As a reminder, 1 acre foot is the volume of water required to cover 1 surface acre to a depth of 1 foot. The formula is surface acres times average depth in feet equals acre feet. An inaccurate volume calculation is the most common path to failure. Overdosing wastes money and can be lethal to the fish, while underdosing results in an ineffective treatment. Before you choose your herbicide, you must test your water to see which chemicals have a right of way to work. Before you use diquat, you must check your water clarity. If your pond water is cloudy, silty, or muddy, do not use diquat. The suspended sediment will bind to the herbicide and deactivate it on contact, wasting your time and money. As we covered, Flumioxazin is extremely sensitive to high pH. If your pH is consistently above 7.5, you will get poor control as the chemical will degrade too rapidly. If you have constant inflow and outflow, you will not be able to maintain the 30 to 90 day contact time required for fluoridone. Using it in a pond with a high exchange is literally pouring money down the drain. If you plan to use a copper-based herbicide, you must test your total alkalinity. Copper compounds can be toxic to fish in soft water. Be careful with using any copper-based herbicide or algicide in water that has a total alkalinity of less than 50 parts per million. With your pre-treatment assessment complete, you are ready to apply. The key difference for Coontail is that the herbicide must be delivered into the water column, not sprayed on top. In our duckweed episode, we stressed that a non-ionic surfactant was required to help the herbicide, stick to the waxy floating leaves. For submerged weeds like Coontail, it's not necessary. You are treating the water column, not the surface. Surfactants are not recommended when treating submerged weeds, as you want the herbicide to disperse into the water to be absorbed by the plants. Since the plant is underwater, you can't just spray the surface. You must use a method to get the chemical down into the water, such as subsurface injection. This is the preferred method for liquid herbicides like diquat, liquid indithol, and liquid fluoridone. The chemical is diluted in a tank and then pumped through a hose or wand that is placed under the water's surface. For large areas, weighted hoses can be dragged behind the boat to release the chemical directly into the weed beds. For granular applications, this method is used for herbicides that come in a granular or pellet form like 2,4-D or granular indithol. The granules are broadcasted over the top of the water using a hand spreader or fertilizer spreader and sink to the bottom, releasing the herbicide directly into the root zone of the plants. Your dosage will almost always be based on the acre-feet calculation, but some labels use the average depth of the treatment area. The label will provide a rate in gallons per acre or pounds per acre foot. Let's work through a contact herbicide treatment. In this example, we'll use indithol. The goal is to apply a set rate per acre foot. Let's say the label recommends 5 gallons of product per acre foot. You measured your pond and found it has about 2 acre feet of volume. 2 acre feet times 5 gallons per acre foot equals 10 gallons of indithol. You would dilute this amount and apply it via subsurface injection throughout the entire 2 acre feet of water, right? Right? Wrong. Never treat the whole pond all at once with a fast-acting herbicide if you want your fish to survive. With an indithol treatment, I'd only treat about a quarter of the pond at once. Instead of 10 gallons of indithol, only apply 2.5 gallons in a quarter section of the pond. For a systemic herbicide treatment, we'll use fluoridone. The goal is to achieve a target concentration in the water. The label provides a rate to achieve the desired concentration. Let's use an example rate of 4 ounces per acre foot. You measured your pond at 2 acre feet. 2 acre feet times 4 ounces per acre foot equals 8 ounces of fluoridone. This liquid is then applied via subsurface injection, distributing it as evenly as possible throughout the entire pond. Right? Right. The slow-acting systemic herbicide is fine to treat the entire pond all at once. That's the best thing about fluoridone. This is the most important safety warning for any type of aquatic weed control. The risk is oxygen depletion. When you kill a dense pond-wide stand of submerged weeds with a fast-acting contact herbicide like diquat or indithol, all of that vegetation begins to decay at once. This decomposition is an aerobic process, meaning it is carried out by bacteria that consume massive amounts of dissolved oxygen. This sudden oxygen crash can be lethal. resulting in a fish kill. To mitigate the potential DO drop, never treat your entire pond at once with a fast-acting herbicide. Treat only a quarter to a third of the pond at once. Wait 10 to 14 days for that section to decompose and for the pond's oxygen levels to recover before treating the next section. The only exception to this is fluoridone. Its slow 30 to 90 day kill is designed to prevent this oxygen crash by allowing the plants to decompose gradually. Finally, you must read the label for water use restrictions. These vary by product and name brand, so I must emphasize, read the label. Most modern herbicides like diquat and fluoridone have no restrictions on swimming or fishing after the application. Irrigation is the big one. Using treated water on your lawn, garden, or crops can cause unwanted collateral damage. Fluoridone has a very long restriction, often 7 to 30 days. Flumioxazin has about 5-day restriction. 2,4-D and diquat have restrictions, about 24 hours. So read the label. As we've stressed in every single episode, chemical treatments are reactive. They are a temporary fix for a symptom. The key to long-term success is to change the conditions of your pond to make it less hospitable for excessive weed growth in the first place. Nutrient load is the single most important long-term strategy. You must address the root cause, excessive nutrients. This means reducing fertilizer use near the pond, creating a vegetative buffer strip of unmowed grass around the pond's edge to filter runoff water before it enters into the pond, and just limiting incoming nutrients and organic matter. Now, in our duckweed episode, we said dyes were ineffective because the plants, float on top of the water. But for submerged weeds like coontail, dyes are definitely an option on the table. These dyes, typically blue or black, work by shading the water column and blocking the wavelengths of sunlight that submerged plants need for photosynthesis. By limiting sunlight, you can inhibit weed growth before it starts. They are most effective when applied early in the spring before the growing season gets underway. Keep in mind though that dyes are still a band-aid fix. In a lot of cases, they will help control one thing, but at the same time give a competitive advantage to something else, such as filamentous algae and duckweed. For small, manageable infestations, you can physically remove the coontail with a rake or even a seine. Now, just like I said with algae and duckweed, this is incredibly labor intensive, but coontail has a unique, frustrating feature. It reproduces from fragments. If you just cut it and let the pieces float away, you're not just failing to control it, you are actively spreading it and making the problem worse. You must remove all cut fragments from the water. I would not actually recommend doing this. This is the natural solution everyone asks about. Will grass carp eat coontail? The answer is a maybe. The results are, very mixed. Many sources list coontail on the preferred food for grass carp. However, other studies warn that it is not a top-tier food, and the carp will often eat other more desirable plants first. Some agencies even state flatly that they are not an effective control option for coontail, and I 100% agree with that. In my experience, they will devour the good stuff first and leave the coontail and southern naiad for you to clean up. We will talk about control methods for southern naiad in another episode, so stay tuned. It is not a guaranteed solution, and you may trade your coontail problem for a bare-bottom pond with no vegetation at all. If you do try it, you must use sterile grass carp. Get the proper state permit if necessary, and use a stocking rate of 6 carp per littoral acre. The littoral area of a pond is the shoreline adjacent water that produces the most aquatic vegetation. To put a number on it for prescriptive reasons, I consider the littoral area anything less than 6 feet deep. Finally, a word of warning on an old school method you might hear about: fertilization. The idea is to fertilize the pond to create a planktonic algae bloom, which then shades out the submerged weeds. From my perspective, this is like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. The entire problem is caused by too many nutrients. Deliberately adding more nutrients just adds fuel to the fire and trades one problem for a much bigger problem, blue-green algae, which could lead to severe oxygen crashes. Just don't do it. Remember, Coontail is a native beneficial plant. The goal should never be eradication, but control. By addressing the root causes of nutrient pollution and using smart preventative measures, you can keep this plant in balance. When you must react, use herbicides as a targeted tool to reclaim your pond and protect your fish, always remembering to treat in small sections to prevent an oxygen crash. Thanks for watching, fellow Pondologists. Controlling Coontail is just one piece of the puzzle to achieving a healthy pond ecosystem. If you found these killer combination cocktails helpful, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss our next episode, where we'll be tackling the secrets of Southern Naiad control. Now remember, you don't need a PhD or master's degree to master the science of pondology. It's your pond, so don't let anyone tell you what you can and can't do with it. You can create your dream pond. You can be your own biologist.